So, is it, well, there's the thumbnail. Is it possible for for people to be moral, but not, but be agnostic? Yeah. Because, like I said in the previous video, agnosticism and atheism are born out of the Christian West with its Christian values, or people say Judeo-Christian values, and its history, and the history of the strife between the Protestant and Catholics, where the Catholics were fighting for, and I know they don't say this in history books, they were fighting for religious toleration, not for a king to come back or a queen to come back and start slaughtering all non-Catholics, but they were fighting for just the right to exist, to worship, right? That all people, all things being equal, people would return to the Roman Catholic Church, and that's largely true. Prior to Vatican II, actually, the Catholic Church was seeing giant influx from Protestants. After Vatican II and the Novus Ordo, it was the other way. But before Vatican II, yeah, the Protestants were losing ground greatly to the Catholics. That's why groups like the Klan had sprung up. That's why, well, the Klan held political power in Mexico for a while, and actually handed its constitution. And the Klan targeted Roman Catholics more than it did Jews, and in many areas even more than it did black people. Especially went after the Italians that were in New Orleans, because there was plenty of Italians that settled in New Orleans, and they're visibly not white or considered white by the Anglo-Dutch, French, Franco populations that had settled that area, and also Scots that were down there. They looked Mexican to these people, like dark Mexican. They were very Catholic, and they spoke a language which, didn't understand. They didn't understand the culture, so they were the target of many attacks. Although there was a good amount of Catholics to kind of insulate them there, but surrounding area, oh boy. Is Protestantism a religion, for one? Well, modern day Protestantism is not, and I would even say back in the day that with exception to Anglican and Lutheranism, which are barely religions, evangelicalism, I don't really know if that counts as being a religion. It's kind of strange. Its practices have more in common with Scientology than they do an actual religion like Eastern Orthodoxy, Roman Catholicism, even Mahayana, even Theravada Buddhism, but Mahayana Buddhism, definitely you could say it's a religion. Islam is an ideology and a political worldview, as well as having religious attachments to it. Although that's mainly speaking about the Sunnis, and then you have things like the Druze, the Shia, the various forms of Ismailism, Mandaeans. These are religions. Orthodox Judaism, whether they be right or wrong. But man is a religious animal. We're both a pattern-seeking animal, which is the reason why we were able to survive, and the reason why over the millennia our ancestors have shaped the modern fruits that we eat. The fruits that you find in a grocery store aren't found in nature. They're not. Corn, came from something that looks like the grass. When the grass gets too long in your yard, and you see the little that corn comes from that. It's not like a prehistoric. It may look like a prehistoric piece of grass, but no, it took a lot of work from the Mesoamericans over generations, over thousands of years, to get the modern day corn that we have today, or maize, I should say, because corn technically in the original English means any grain. Same thing with the wheat, barley, sheep. Sheep were originally more of a goat-like / antelope-like creature that lived in rocky parts of mountains and didn't have the type of wool for making clothes. They had to be bred. Same thing with dogs. I mean, you see the vast variety of dogs we have. So we're a pattern-seeking animal, and we also apply that to the world to shape the world, as does basically all animals, but also we are a religious animal. We worship, we place importance on things. The first sign of how we see where the first humans were, the first sign of modern brain activity, of thought, of what we consider human, what do we look for? Burial of the dead, or any death rites. Like, we found a burial where there was the body was buried, even though it was kind of in a shallow grave, but only rocks on top. But there were also flowers. They found a lot of pollen, so there was flowers in and around the grave that had been picked from places that were farther down on the mountain, and from far away, you know, and certain treasured goods with these people, like stone axes and spear points, not things that had killed them, but, you know, and two, pictures, like we find in the Cave of Dreams, the Werner Herzog documentary type thing. So the most important place in society is their temples, right? I'm not going to say if you look at a Protestant church, it looks nothing but a speaking hall, if that, and they might have a cross. But if you see a place where the architecture is sacred, because Eastern Orthodox churches, traditionalist Catholic churches, Hindu temples, Buddhist temples, and mosques all have sacred architecture to them. And if you see pictures like this adorning the place, you know, that's something that there are places that have prohibition on depicting humans and animals, which would be the synagogues and the mosques, but they have their own type of ornamentation, whether it be plants or geometric patterns or, you know, what have you. The prayer rug is a reflection of the Garden of Eden with the 4 rivers and the walled garden and the vegetation. So these communist governments, right, and sometimes even the fascist ones, or these crazy dictatorial regimes that are atheists. Now, atheist governments are never secular, because it's not that we don't mind religion. It's that their state official religious belief is atheism. It's answering that question for its people. That is the most destructive thing you can do to a person, just like the most abusive thing you can do to a child, or one of the most abusive things, if you want to really damage that child for life, is not allow them to draw pictures or play or have any toys at all. And there are sects. A lot of them are within Islam, but there are some Protestant sects. I'm not going to refer to them as Christian, but they would claim to be that they're the only true Christians that try to practice this. And the person that comes out of that is underdeveloped, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Like they're just, they're not allowed to play as a child. You're not allowed to play games, dance, have sports, or draw. Not exercising playing and your imagination and games, these all teach us how to be humans and be adults and interact with other people. These cults and sects from anywhere in the world, they inevitably collapse, or they churn out very violent, domineering, cruel people, right? Because it doesn't allow for the compassion type thing. So no, if you had a completely atheistic society where that was enforced, those end in bloodbaths, right? Now, if you had a society where you had a bunch of people land on an island, all of them were agnostic / atheist or whatever, and said, well, we don't believe in God, and we're going to be away from the world and not tell our children about any of these religions or anything. We're not even going to use words like God or heaven or spirit or soul or good or evil. We're going to just, try, almost like kind of like a 1984 thing, but try to be benign with it. Within a few generations, you'd have a full-fledged religion, and it would be more of like a cult, and you'd probably get something that would reflect the ancient pagans that we read about from the Romans and the ancient Hebrews. And it probably would look very ugly. Because man craves that. Now, atheists can make all the arguments they want in the world about there's no afterlife and this and that, but for psychological health and for society and for obeying the law, having a common culture, not raping and killing your neighbor, not raping and killing your not your immediate neighbor, but the people there that you don't really know, kind of the stranger, is not built into us. It's taught into us. And Rousseau was completely wrong. Just take a look. I mean, there are plenty of Native American tribes that could tell you weakness and humiliation and embarrassment and shame and being, the fool. It's all the same thing. So atheist arguments against religion like Dawkins, I have the God delusion. And God is not great, and their arguments are crap. They just go after bits and pieces in like the Bible. How is this scientifically possible? It's religion. It's not supposed to be dealing with science. Or God is a hypocrite because they're judging God by the standards of the morals from Christianity and Western society. It's really no, it's stupid. It's ridiculous.